the strain. Was it a bicycle? What is wrong with my brain? Is it the end of me? No, I must still believe. So I'm still in love, you see. Heck yeah, now I'm on my way. But let's stay focused, there's still a job in hand that we must do. Cameras start to click, we know what create is something new. So go Marty and Sarah and Mark and Matt, Owen, Smitty, McGrilly and Jamie Lame in the Archer County Band. The Archer County Band. The Archer County Band. The Archer County Band. Stop the clock, we're done, we're rolling. Sound the horn and sing that we are going. 27 hours, that is the time. So let's hop on the bus and let it shine, 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 shine. Say sha la 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 la, 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 sha la 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 la. Good evening, folks. You're very welcome to Bandido Talks. We are back Friday evening, 7 p.m. here on YouTube. That can only mean one thing when we make it to Friday evening. We are going to be doing some reflecting tonight. It is our Let's Reflect segment. Of course, we will be reflecting upon Tuesday's upload. Now, what happened on Tuesday? We had our second special guest episode, and a fine episode it was indeed. We had Stevey J. For our second guest episode, we are going to be reflecting on that particular interview, on that particular episode tonight. We have a lot to get into. It was a really, really good show. It was a really good interview. Of course, folks, if you have not seen our Tuesday upload, it was a guest episode. It was with Mr. Stevey J, entrepreneur, results consultant. It was a really good episode. Stevie was on form. By the time we had reached about 35 minutes into our little show, he had went through everything so precisely and in such good detail. I was sort of looking at the time and thinking, my goodness me, he's covered everything. So we aren't going to, of course, we're not going to go through all of the episode. There's a specific angle, a specific thing that we touched on in our guest episode with Stevey J that we're going to talk about tonight. Of course, it is episode 28. Oh, to be educated. In inverted commas. This is going to be a good show tonight. I'm looking forward to this one. But of course, yes, we did have our Tuesday upload. I would really encourage you to go and watch the guest interview, episode number 2, guest number 2, here on Bandido Talks. Really good show. Lots of really good insights. Stevie has been there, he has done it in terms of business. So if you are interested in all things business, we really got into a whole bunch of really, really useful information. The fundamentals of business. If we want to get good at anything, we need to know and to understand the fundamentals. And we got really into good depth with respect to the fundamentals of business on our guest episode on Tuesday. So, of course, you don't need to leave the show tonight. We are on live. You wouldn't want to give up the opportunity to watch a live show, especially the first live show of the weekend. So, of course, you can watch the guest interview after tonight's show because we are on live. But a really good show it was. We're going to get into all of that tonight. Our specific angle of the interview from Tuesday. There's something that Stevie touched on. I actually asked him about it. We're going to get into that tonight. But of course, if you do enjoy our little Let's Reflect segment here on a Friday evening, well then feel free to like the live stream. Throw us some of your charity. We will gratefully receive a little thumbs up here at Bandido Talks. Of course, if you are joining us live, as I always say, I would highly encourage you to get active in the live chat. Of course, your engagement with the show does make things a little more interesting, a little spicier. Leave your comments, leave your insights, relevant or not relevant, on topic or off topic. We'll go through all of our live chats at the end of the show, if we have any, of course. We've had some good live engagement over the last few shows, so let's see if we can keep our hot streak running tonight. Of course, if you are watching the live stream after the live event has been posted, the same thing applies. Get down into the comments section. Let me know what you think about everything that we are going to talk about tonight. And then finally, if you like what we do here on Bandido Talks, if you find it interesting, insightful, valuable, useful in some way, then you can, of course, subscribe to the channel. We have lots of stuff coming your direction. We have 3 live shows every week, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, 7 p.m. Irish time, here on YouTube. So you always have your 3 live shows. We have an upload every Tuesday. It could be a best bits upload. It could be a guest episode like we had this Tuesday. We actually had to move our best bits upload to last night. It got shoved into the Thursday slot. Guest episodes take priority. But it could be a guest episode. It could be a best bits upload on a Tuesday. And if we actually do have a guest interview, then you get even more value, because the best bits episode then gets uploaded on Thursday. And of course, we have our YouTube shorts coming throughout the week, which are always little highlights from the previous week's shows. And then as well as that, if you thought that was enough, if you thought you had your value, the Bandido is going to be releasing some original music. I'm sure you can't wait for the Bandido's original music, but it will be coming whether you want it or not. There will be some original music coming your direction. This guitar is going to be put to use. I'm getting together some of the compositions, some original songs. We want to avoid copyright infringements here on YouTube. And so we're going to bring the original material. And besides, there are loads of people who do covers. You'll find far more talented musicians than the old Bandido here. So you can go and listen to their covers. If you want something original, we will be uploading in the incoming weeks some original tunes. So anyway, if you find all that useful, or if you find all that valuable, then you can subscribe to the channel and you will be notified of any live shows we have coming up or any of these uploads. Now, with all of that out of the road, let us get into tonight's show. So as I've already said in our little introduction, it is Friday night. Friday night is our Let's Reflect segment, and every Friday we always reflect upon our Tuesday upload. And of course, what was our Tuesday upload this week? It was our second guest interview episode with Mr. Stevey J. A really good show. And what did we talk about? Well, it was Stevey J Talks Business. And to just give a very brief summary of what we went through in the episode, we basically talked all about the fundamentals of business. We, of course, talked about some of the things that Stevey is doing. I will link the episode in the comments down below. I will pin a comment down below. I will leave a link to this guest episode with Stevey J, so you can watch it in your own time. So we talked about what Stevey has coming up, his own projects that he's involved in, the fundamentals of business. Of course, Stevey is an entrepreneur himself. He is a results consultant. So not only has he been successful with his own business endeavors, but now he's actually helping other businesses go through the gears, go through the levels to try and improve their businesses even more. So Stevey has walked the walk. He has been there. He has done it. And so it was a really good episode. You're getting to learn from someone who has been essentially in the business arena for a very long time, decades. He has done many, many interesting things. He has worked with a whole bunch of really interesting businesses and people. Of course, Stevey's website is the primary source of contact. And his website, of course, it will be linked to the interview episode, but it is www.steveyj.com. That is STEVEYJ.com. And I would encourage you to go to Stevey's website because there's a whole bunch of information on there. There are testimonials. Very interesting to read those testimonials because, as I've said, there are a diversity of individuals who Stevey has actually worked with. And you get to read in their own words what Stevey has been able to do with them in collaboration. And of course, Stevey knows business inside out. That's his bread and butter. So we got into the fundamentals of business. Stevey talked about the 7 levers of business. And then we talked a little bit about Stevey himself and his own background and how he has actually arrived at the conclusions that he has arrived at with respect to business. And this is where our little live show is going to come in tonight. Because when you watch the episode, what you will notice is that Stevey J really knows his apples from his onions. I don't know why I keep saying that, apples from onions. I don't know where I've got that from. But anyway, you get the gist of what I'm saying. He knows his apples from his onions. In other words, he knows his stuff. When he's talking about business in this case, he has a system. There's a system that Stevey will implement, that he will teach people who come to him, who are looking to try and scale their business, bring the business through the gears. And by implementing the system, this is going to allow business owners to do that exact thing. Now, when you watch the episode, you will obviously see Stevey's competency shines through immediately. And the interesting thing is, as you're listening to Stevey, and by the way, folks, when you listen to the interview, Stevey has no notes. He doesn't have someone behind the camera with cue cards reminding him what he has to say. Stevey knows his stuff, and you'll see on the interview itself, he just goes through everything with precision in really good detail. And by the time, as I've already said, by the time we actually got to whatever it was, 30 minutes, 35 minutes, I was kind of looking at the time and thinking, my goodness me, just really, really precise, really swift, but not rushed, but just a very comprehensive overview of the fundamentals of business. So anyway, we get through the first 35 minutes of the interview. And this is what you always hope. Whenever you have a guest, if any of you have ever hosted a guest on a podcast or at some event. Obviously, whenever things are being uploaded to the internet, it is understandable that guests who will be coming onto a show can be understandably nervous. And so as a host, the Bandido as a host, what he's hoping is that the guest can give the best version of themselves. We were able to see this with David Feeney from Desi's Casual Clothing. An excellent interview with David. And we had the same thing with Stevey J. And, you know, when you're hosting, you're just hoping that the person comes on and they're able to essentially represent what it is that they do to the best of their ability. Stevie did exactly that. And so we get to the 35-minute mark, or sort of 35, 40 minutes. We are about 2/3 of the way through the interview. And Stevie has just laid it out. Wee buns, easy peasy. We've went through all the 7 levers, the fundamentals of business, and it's all been laid out. And so Stevie says something as he's just finishing up the final lever, research and development. Of course, all the levers, I'm going to try and remember the levers. Let's put the Bandido on the spot. So lever number 1 was marketing. Lever 2 was sales, I believe. Lever 3 was operations and delivery. Lever 4 was team. Lever 5 was culture. Lever 6 was finance. And then lever 7, research and development. Well, I put myself on the spot there, didn't I? I could have looked like a fool if I was not able to recount all of the levers. But anyway, we go through all of these levers. These levers represent the fundamentals of business. And Stevie goes into detail on all of those levers. Check out the episode if you want to know what I'm talking about, of course. But anyway, as Stevie's finishing up the final lever, research and development, he says something interesting. And so you watch the first 2/3 of the interview and you think, my goodness me, this man knows his apples from his onions. That's what you're thinking. And so a logical question that you may have in your mind as you're watching the interview is, where did Stevie find all of this out? Did he go to university? Did he take some business course? Did he get some business certificate? How did Stevie come to these conclusions about business and about the fundamentals of business and about having a mission for your business and about understanding the system that underpins any successful business from Stevie's perspective? How did he come to these conclusions? And many people watching the interview may think, well, I mean, someone who is this competent, they must have went to university. They must have a business degree. That is what some people may think, due to the delivery of all of this information on the episode from Stevie. You listen to it and you think, yes, that's a highly competent individual. He's been successful in his own business endeavors. He's helping other people. He must have learned this at university. Incorrect. That would be incorrect. And this was the fascinating thing, because I didn't even bring it up. Stevie brought it up himself. And what did Stevie say at about let's just say about 2/3 of the way into our interview? He says it. He drops this little comment that may have went over the head of many's an individual who was watching the episode. And what does he say? He says, I never went to business school. And he didn't go to university to learn all of these things. He didn't go to some program, some conventional, some state-funded institution, some business school to figure this out. No, that is not how Stevie came to the conclusions that he has come to with respect to business. Do you know how he worked all of this out? He got out into the real world. He talked to real people in the real world. And he ran experiments. He got busy. He put the theory into practice. And this is going to be a recurring theme throughout tonight's show. Of course, the episode is called Oh, to be Educated. Stevey J and people like Stevey J, we know many of them. They didn't go to university. They don't have some fancy degree. They may not even have A levels. Yet here they are, highly successful businessmen, highly successful in life. Now, one might be left scratching their noggin. How could this be? How could it be that someone maybe doesn't have A levels? How could it be that someone hasn't went to university and hasn't got a degree from a state-funded institution? How could this be? Given that when we are at school, it is rammed down our throats that we need A levels. Oh, it's so critical. We need the A levels. Because if you don't have A levels, your employer's going to look at you and say, well, you are not qualified to work under me. And if you don't, of course, have a university degree, well, you're really fucked, aren't you? No employer's going to want to employ you if you don't have a degree from a state-funded institution. Isn't that right? Oh, that's right. There are people like Stevey J and many other people who have not been through the state-funded institutions that we call universities, yet they are highly successful. But of course it is rammed down our throats at school. University, A-levels, qualifications, pieces of paper with little numbers and words on them. That's the most important thing. You have to have your piece of paper with your 2-1 or your first class honours or your 3 A's at A level, so you can wave a piece of paper around and give yourself a pat on the shoulder for writing on an examination paper. A lot of people could be deceived into thinking that A levels and university degrees are the only way that you are going to be successful in this life. But of course, we then have people on Bandido Talks like David Feeney and Stevey J. Did they go to university? No, they did not. Are they successful businessmen? Yes, they are. So this is the thing. Oh, to be educated, episode 28. This is our show tonight. And something that you're going to hear me repeat over and over and over again is this phrase. And the phrase is as follows. Living in the land of theory. Let me repeat that again. Living in the land of theory. Now, what does that mean? And how does it apply to our Tuesday guest episode with Stevey J? And even to our first guest episode with David Feeney? Living in the land of theory. Well, you see, folks, this is one of the biggest problems with secondary school education and with most degrees at university. When you are at school, when you are at university, of course there will be exceptions to what I'm saying, but I'm just talking generally, in a generalized fashion. Secondary school and most university degrees. When you are at secondary school, when you decide to go to university, most of the time you are living in the land of theory. What does Stevey J do? He lives in the land of applying theory practically in the real world. And then what does he do? He applies the theory, runs experiments, and then what does he get when he runs experiments having implemented theory? He gets feedback. And then people like Stevey J use feedback to guide their decision making. And you're going to hear me repeat this over and over again tonight. If you live exclusively in the land of theory, and this is what happens, incidentally, when you are at secondary school and for most university degrees. Think about it, folks. What do you do at secondary school? You've got your notebook. Yes, here's my notebook. And here are my 15 different colored pens. I've got a pink pen, and I've got a green pen, and I've got a red pen, a black pen, and a blue pen. All my different colored pens. Then I have my 25 different colored highlighters. Oh, I've got a yellow highlighter. I've got a green one, a purple one. And what do? You sit with your hole on a seat, staring up at a teacher or a professor as they talk to you. And then you go, shh, and you start writing stuff down. And then you take out your ruler and you start to underline what you've just written. And you think, great, I'm making progress, productivity. Then you get one of your 25 coloured highlighters and go, and you highlight what it is that you've just underlined and written. And then you end up with this big notebook full of writing. And what do you do with all of this theory? Absolutely nothing. The notebook sits full of all of this writing, all of these underlined words and phrases, all of these highlighted parts within paragraphs. And what do you actually do with this? Diddly squat. You've got this big notebook, multiple notebooks. And what are you actually doing? What are you actually doing? All you are doing is living in the land of theory. That's what you're doing. Because, folks, I'm not saying that you shouldn't take notes. And I'm not saying that it's important to go and find information through reading or listening to other people. Of course that is important. But if you stay exclusively in the land of theory and you never implement what you've learned practically in the real world, then that means you are not getting any feedback. So you have no way to prove whether what it is that you are writing down, highlighting and underlining is actually useful. You don't know. The only way that you can figure out if what you are writing down, in other words, what theoretically might work, the only way that you can figure out if your theory is correct is to do what? Run experiments in the real world. In other words, you need to take your theory that you've written in your notebook and you need to go out into the real world, implement your theory, put it into practice, and then get feedback and figure out if what it is that you're writing down and learning is actually useful. Because guess what? If you never actually take your theory and put it into practice, how do you know it's actually accurate and correct? You don't. And so this is the thing. What does someone like Stevey J do? Stevey J did not go to some fancy university to essentially pay the university to do some degree and get himself into debt. No. You can see in the episode, what did Stevey J do? He started out as a painter and decorator, and he learned his craft in that particular field. And as he said in the interview, to this day, if you asked him to leap out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning, he could do painting and decorating with his eyes closed because he's honed those skills. And how did Stevey figure out all of this information about business? Well, what Stevey J did was he acquired information. Stevey references a number of books in the interview. He read books. He went and met real people in the real world. In other words, he acquired information. He acquired theory, we could say. Theory about how things are supposed to work. So he reads a book and the book says, look, this is how the world of business works. He talks to someone and this person says, look, this is how the world of business works. So Stevey and people like Stevey, they acquire information and they have a theoretical understanding of how business and the world works. But notice what people like Stevey J don't do. They don't permanently sit in the land of theory. That is what they do not do. What they do is they acquire information, they have a theoretical understanding of how things are supposed to work, and then what do? They don't just stop there. Oh no. They then take the theory, put it into practice in the real world by running experiments, and when you run experiments, what do you get? Feedback. And feedback acts like a light. Imagine you're in a dark room, a pitch black room, and you can't see for shit. You can literally see nothing. Feedback acts like a light. It illuminates your path in this dark room. If you don't have any light and you're in a pitch black dark room, you are then having to gamble with every movement. It's a gamble because you've got no feedback. You have no feedback, so you don't know where you are walking. You're literally in the dark. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know if moving forward is the right move. You don't know if moving backwards is the right move, or to the right or to the left. What you need in order to plot effectively in your life and to become successful at whatever it is you want to get successful at, you need feedback. And that's what feedback is like. Feedback is like a light in the dark room. All of a sudden, when you have an illuminated object in the room, you can suddenly see, and it's like, oh, right, okay, I can see a little bit better now. In other words, you're getting feedback about your surroundings. The light is providing you with visual feedback. And when you have this visual feedback, you have a better understanding of where you are situated in the dark room. And this is the problem with secondary school and most university degrees. You literally dwell for all of eternity in the land of theory. Think about it. As I've said, when you're at school, what do? You have to put a penguin suit on. We call it a school uniform. So you get your penguin suit on, and then you go in for 6 hours with your rear end stuck to a chair as someone lectures you. And what do? You sit there like a fucking cabbage out in the field. You know a cabbage, folks? What do you notice about a cabbage? It doesn't move. It just sits there. So that's what you're like at school. You're like a cabbage stuck to your chair. And what do? Well, you have to sit there in silence. Sit there in silence as the teacher lectures to you. What are you able to do? Well, because you have to have your rear stuck to a chair, the only thing you can do is take out your notebook and your 15 different coloured pens and your 25 different coloured highlighters and write stuff in a notebook. In other words, you get to speculate, theorize about how things operate in the real world. You're in the land of theory. And what you really need to do is, you need to go, take some notes, get some feedback, get some information. And then you know what you need to do? See, when you get the information, you go out and you run some experiments with the information, because you need to verify, is the information all that it is cracked up to be? Because you could be reading a book. You could be getting information from some other person in your life. And obviously what you don't want to do is to just blindly follow that person's advice or that book's advice, because that would be outsourcing your thinking. You don't want to do that. We've talked about that before. You want to take the new information, which is what we are going to call theory. You've been given new information about how the world is supposed to work. You need to then take the new information and apply it practically by running experiments with that new information. When you run experiments with the information, you get feedback, which means you can then go back and reanalyze the information and reanalyze your own approach and see if you can make it better. And so it creates this virtuous cycle. You find new information, you go out into the real world, and you implement the theory, put it into practice, and then when you put it into practice, you do that by running experiments, and when you run experiments, you get feedback, and you're back to the start again. And so you keep going around. It's a virtuous cycle. Because as you continue to get feedback, that is your guiding light in the dark room. The more feedback you can get, the more illuminated the room becomes. And the more illuminated the room becomes, the better you can plot your movements. And the better you can see the path ahead of you. If you don't have feedback because you're living in the land of theory, like you do at secondary school, like you do at most university degrees, you cannot actually effectively plot your path towards improvement. And this is what Stevey J was telling us on our guest interview episode. Everything that Stevey has learned, he has done so through using this virtuous cycle feedback loop. You look at Stevey J's story. You go to his website, you listen to the interview, go to his website, check out his social media. It's all linked underneath the guest interview episode. Go check him out. And you'll see what type of an individual Stevey J is. He gets information. He then doesn't live in the land of theory. He takes the information, he applies it practically, he runs experiments, he gets feedback, and then he refines his approach, and he makes it better and better and better. How do you think he came up with his system, the 7 levers? This just didn't magically fall out of the sky and appear in his head. No, this took many years of experimentation and feedback. So he gets the theory, implements it through experimentation, gets feedback. That allows him to refine his approach more. He gets more new information, more feedback, refine, more experimentation, more feedback, refine. And this is the problem with secondary school. This is why the episode is called, Oh, to be educated. Because we think of secondary school. Oh yes, you're going to get educated about the world in your fucking penguin suit, with your school bag on the back, with your rear end glued to a chair. Excuse me, sir, can I take a piss? You have to ask to take a piss. You're not allowed to go outside the school grounds because it would be a safety hazard. Child protection. There's no practical implementation. When do you ever do anything practical at school? Anything. When do you actually take the theory that you learn in the classroom and practically implement it through experimentation to get feedback? When do you do that at school? You don't do it. And at most university degrees, you don't do it either. You sit in a lecture theatre, some schmuck, some lecturer is down at the bottom of the lecture theatre, and he's lecturing you, and you take notes, and then what do? You memorize your notes, and then you regurgitate it on an examination paper. Well, whoop-de-doo. Well done. That's a great skill, isn't it? It's the same with secondary school. When you do your GCSEs and your A-levels, what are we doing here, folks? All we're doing is we are memorizing information. Mindlessly memorizing information so that we can vomit it back onto an examination paper so that we can then get our A star. We can get our 3 A's at A-level, and we can get our 2-1 degree at university so that we can brag and say, look how great I am. I got 3 A's and I got a 2-1. And then somebody asks you, all right, so what can you do? What do you mean, what can I do? Well, what can you do? What can you do for me? Can you do anything for me? If I wanted to employ you, what could you do? What skills do you have? Well, I can take notes and underline words, and I've got highlighters. I can highlight stuff. Useless. Nobody's going to want to employ you if that's all you can do. Is fucking write down sentences and words, underline them and highlight them. Nobody cares if you can memorize stuff and regurgitate it back onto an examination script. That's not skills. Those aren't skills. That's just good memory. Maybe that might come in handy for some little novel task. But that's not a skill. Those aren't real world skills that are going to be useful. Memorizing stuff, mindlessly memorizing something, you don't even half understand it. You just know how to memorize it. And then literally regurgitate it back onto an exam paper. Whoop-de-doo, well done. And you've got your little piece of paper that says 3 A's and a 2-1 for my business degree. No one gives a shit. No one gives a shit about your CV. No one gives a flying fuck about your CV. You'd be putting all this effort into your CV. Oh, well, you know, I got 11 GCSEs and I got 2 A stars and 7 A's and 4 B's and, you know, I don't even know if that all added up correctly, but you get the idea. Oh, I got 3 A's at A level and, you know, I did this work over here at university and I got a 2-1. I got a 2-1. Nobody cares. All an employer wants to know, whether it's an employer or someone you are going to collaborate with, they do not care about numbers and words on a piece of paper. All they care about is, can you do the job that they want you to do? Are you competent in what it is that they want you to do? And you can bring your CV and you can bring all your little numbers and words on a piece of paper from your state-funded institutions and your examination boards. Nobody cares in the real world. In the real world, nobody cares. People judge you by your competency, your skills, your capability. Nobody cares what you did at school. Nobody cares about your university degree, what you did at university. They want to know, are you competent right here, right now? Can you do the task in hand that they want you to do? And if you can't do the task in hand to a high standard, your pieces of paper aren't worth the ink that they are written on. No one cares. And so this is the thing. When I interview someone like Stevey J, or I interview someone like David Feeney, and you start to see, I know it's only 2 interviews, but you start to see a little pattern. The little pattern being, here we have successful people, very successful people, and they did not pass through the standard educational pathways that are shoved down our throats when we are at school. No. What did they do? They got out of the land of theory. They didn't just live their life in the land of theory. Reading and writing, and never applying the theory in the real world. That's not what they do. What they do is they take their theory, implement it practically in the real world. Through running experiments, they get feedback, and so the virtuous cycle continues. They're able to hone their craft through that process. When you're at school, secondary school, or most university degrees, what is it that you're doing? You're in the land of theory. And what is it that we're trying to take away from this show tonight as a lesson? The lesson is, folks, you want to take action. When you have your theory, when you have a theoretical framework for how it is you think something works, you need to take the theory. You need to put it into action. Implement it in the real world. If you never implement your theory and test it through running experiments, you will never get any feedback. And if you don't get any feedback, how are you supposed to refine and hone your process and get better? You can't. You will stagnate. You will stagnate because you have no feedback. You will be in the dark room, the pitch black dark room. You won't know where to move. because you have no feedback. In other words, you have no light to illuminate the room. And so that's the thing. That's why I really enjoyed interviewing Stevey J and also David Feeney from a few weeks back. Because, and this is another thing too, folks. This is another thing. As I'm thinking about this. Traditional education. I understand that you have to stay in school for a certain amount of time. Of course. Isn't that funny? Oh, free education. Oh, but you have to stay there until you're 16. Oh, so you get it for free. Oh, but you're not allowed to leave until you're at least 16. That's funny. That's a separate issue for a different day, perhaps. But anyway, I understand that legally, whoever invented that law, that you have to stay in free education. Yeah, that's right. Free education. It sounds great, doesn't it? But then you have to legally go to school whether you want to or not. Oh, but it's free. Yeah, do you want a free hamburger? No, I don't eat meat. But it's free and you have to take it or I'm going to blow your brains out. Right, well, that's not a great deal. And that's the thing. If you don't want to go to school, let's say you have parents who are kind of looking and going, nah, I don't want my kids to go to school. Of course, they get fucked by the law. They'll be taken to court. So that's kind of funny. Yeah, education, free education. But you have to attend until you're 16. Otherwise, your parents are going to jail. Yeah, that seems like a bit of a strange dynamic that we have. Anyway, the law is what it is. So you have to stay in school until you're 16. And I understand that that means you're going to have to do GCSEs in some shape or form. You're going to have to endure to some degree. But this is the thing. You go to school. And remember we've talked about on previous shows, folks. When you are 14, 15, 16 years of age, you don't know shit about the world. You really know nothing. And so, isn't it funny that at 14, 15, 16 years of age, you are being asked, oh, well, you need to know what subjects you want to do because this decision is going to define the rest of your existence. You need to get your shit together at 16 years of age. Otherwise, your life will be a misery because it's critical that you choose the right GCSEs and you must choose the right A-levels or else you're fucked. Yeah. I think some people are starting to realize that that is maybe a slight exaggeration on behalf of our teachers and professors, and also from our parents, because this is what I'm coming on to now. As a 15-year-old, you don't know shit about the world. And so, to a degree, you are dependent on the experience and the knowledge of your parents. Your parents, most people tend to live with their parents. And so you're hoping, because remember, you're only 14 or 15 years of age, you don't have a lot of experience in the world. That's not your fault. So you're kind of depending on these figures, these adult figures in your life. You hope that they're going to guide you as best as possible. And this is what I notice. This is just the Bandido's observation. Whether it's true or not, I'll let you listen. And you can come to your own conclusion. But this is my observation. A lot of the time, 14, 15, 16-year-olds are getting strong-armed into doing A-levels, into doing university degrees. By who? By their parents. Their parents want them to get A-levels. Their parents want them to go to university and to get a university degree from a state-funded institution, educational institution. I wonder why the parents want to do this. I wonder why the parents are so pushy. Why are they strong-arming their children into getting A levels when they probably don't want to do them? Who really, think about this, folks, who wants to do exams? I actually think, if we're actually honest with ourselves, think about it. Who really wants to do exams? Who enjoys doing exams? Who really enjoys that process? Or do most people see it as an obligation, a chore, something they have to do because their teacher said so, or their parents said so? Who really wants to do exams? Not a lot of people, I don't think. That's just my own observations. Most young kids, and especially young men, I'm a man, so I'm going to speak from the male's perspective. Not a lot of males really want to be doing a whole bunch of examinations, really. Having your whole glued to a seat. You can't move, you have to sit there, and you have to write stuff. It's not that interesting. You're living in the land of theory. A lot of students, a lot of male students, don't really want to do this. It's just not their thing. It's not that interesting. What is interesting about sitting down, having to revise fucking history, garbage history from a garbage book, geography, abstract mathematics, all of this stuff? It's so abstract. It's not really applicable to the real world. And I think most kids, even with their lack of experience in the real world, their intuition is telling them, I would rather just be outside playing with my mates, honing my craft, working maybe part-time somewhere, getting their band of mates together, going out on the town. You know, if you really left it up to the kids, would they willingly go into school in their penguin suits with their school bags that are really heavy, with a whole bunch of books and pens and pencil cases and all this nonsense? Do you really think most teenagers would willingly subject themselves to this if it wasn't legally binding? Of course they wouldn't. They would just go and hang out with their friends in their normal clothes, and they would probably actually go do some productive work. They'd probably go and work under someone, get a wee bit of pocket change, and then go out and buy stuff, go out and do stuff, go out and explore, get busy, experimenting with the world, running experiments, getting feedback, making mistakes, failing, taking that feedback on board and improving and improving and improving, trying to get more money. Because when they get more money, they can afford things. They can impress their women. They probably have the hots for some chick. And if they're able to get a little bit of moolah in the system, they can maybe buy her something. They can maybe start to flex a little bit. Do they really want to go to school in their penguin suits and listen to some teacher lecturing them for 6 hours a day? They're going to go to Spanish class, then they're going to go to math, then they're going to go to English literature, then they're going to go to history class, then they're going to go to geography, then they're going to go to business studies, then they're going to go to Learning for Life and Work, LLW. Isn't that an amusing subject? Learning for Life and Work. You get one class a week. That's what I got in school for learning. Oh, Lord almighty. Don't get me started. LLW, Learning for Life and Work. One class a week. That's all you got. And you know what? It was basically like a free period. It was a piss take of a class. So was careers. That was a piss take too. Careers, yeah. Big deal. Oh, careers, that's not important. It wouldn't do to actually run some experiments and see some of the things that you're interested in. Oh no, university, that's your career. We are grooming you here at school. I remember I was told one time. I remember I asked, why do we have to wear a school uniform? What is the point of wearing a school uniform? Why am I in black shoes, in tight trousers, with a belt on, with a fucking red tie or a green tie. Why am I wearing a shirt? I would never choose to wear these clothes if it was left up to me. Why am I wearing a school uniform? I remember asking this question. And what was the answer I got? From one of my teachers, whom I will not name. We are preparing you for the real world of work. Well, hasn't that statement aged very well indeed? So that's why I was told I had to wear a school uniform, because you know what? That's how the world works. You have to walk around in penguin suits. That's right. We are grooming you for the world of work. Get your penguin suit ready. That's what I was told. And that didn't fly with the Bandido. As you can see, the Bandido style doesn't exactly mesh very well with penguin suits and school uniforms. It doesn't mesh very well. So anyway, where was I going with this? School, yes, and parents. You know, when you're 15 or 16 years of age, you don't know shit about the world. As I've already tried to make the case, I don't think very many young males, and maybe, I don't know, I can't speak from the female perspective. I'm not a female. But I'm going to assume that most females as well, would they really want to go to school if they had their own free choice? Probably not. The vast majority of people would just hang out with their friends at their houses or in town. I don't think they would be voluntarily going to school. They just meet up elsewhere. And so this is the thing. Students probably wouldn't choose to go to school. And when you're that age, you don't really know anything about the world. But of course, in come the parents. And this is just my observation. The Bandido has observed that many parents have enormous egos, and they like to try and live their life through their children. And they like to view their children like little shiny trophies that they're trying to polish. So they look at their children like a little shiny trophy, and they whip out the polish, and they're trying to make them as shiny as possible so that they can put them up on the mantelpiece and show them off to the rest of the village and say, look how wonderful my children are. They got 3 A's at A level. They have a 2-1 at university. They have such marvellous gene quality. I wonder where they got the marvellous genes from. That's right, they got them from me. And I think there's a bit of ego going on with parents. Parents are trying to literally get their children to perform as much as possible so that it reflects nicely upon them. Hence the strong arming. They are strong arming. They're pressuring their children into doing A levels, even though the kids don't really want to do them. If they had their own free choice, they'd be out of there. They wouldn't even go to school. But the parents are strong arming them. Oh, no, you know, it's really important that you do A levels because this is going to define your life. The employers are going to be looking at your A levels. It's really important. You need to get an A level in this, this, and this. Because if you don't do it now, you're fucked for the rest of your life. You'll never be able to get employed. I hope they don't bump into Stevey J. I hope none of them kids bump into Stevey J, because if they bump into him, they're going to be very confused because they're going to say, Stevie, did you go to university? Did you get a whole bunch of A levels? And Stevie will say, no, I didn't do that. I just got information, applied it practically in the real world through running experiments. And then, you know, I got feedback and I honed my approach. I went and met more new people, read some more books, continued to apply the theory in the real world, you know, ran more experiments, got more feedback, and then I started to hone my craft that way. Yeah, no, I didn't need the university degree or all the A levels. No, wasn't necessary. And so the kids would be looking and going, but I was told that I needed A levels and it was critical for the rest of my existence. These decisions were going to define my life. Goodness gracious me, folks. And this is the thing. The Bandido's observation is you have a whole bunch of egomaniac, pushy parents a lot of the times. Not all the time, but a lot of the times. You have these parents who are trying to hold up their children like shiny, polished trophies. And they want to hold them up to the rest of the world. You know, a bit like the Lion King? You know the way in the Lion King you get, who is it, Simba? He gets held up by the monkey. And all the giraffes and all the gazelles that are going to be eaten by the lions, they're all rejoicing because you know it's the circle of life. Isn't that funny too? In the Lion King, you know, Simba's being held up. Here is the future king of the land that is going to eat you. And they're all celebrating, going, yes, the circle of life. He's going to be gnawing on my rear in a few years. So let's celebrate. And I think that's how people think of their children. They think of their children a lot of the times on this big swanky mountainside, holding them up to the village and saying, look how fantastic my child is. They got 3 A levels, they got A stars, they got a university degree. Look, here's the picture of their university graduation. They've got their little hat on and their robe and they're in a penguin suit again. Doesn't he look great in his penguin suit and his robe and his hat? Isn't he just so sophisticated? Isn't his gene quality just so marvellous? Yes, that's right, I am his parent. I produced this individual, so my genes must also be great as well. Aren't I a marvellous parent that I was able to produce this offspring? Egomaniacs, a lot of parents. And so here you have these egomaniac parents pushing their children to do A levels and university degrees that have them living in the land of theory, fucking useless. They're not applying the theory in the real world. They're not really honing their skills. They're not running any experiments. They're not getting any feedback. They are stagnant and they don't know why they have no skills and nothing of value to offer to anyone, and they're depressed about it. I wonder why. Oh, better still. And when they go to university, not only do they get a useless degree, but they're in debt. Isn't this just a great deal, folks? You live in the land of theory. You never apply what it is that you actually learn in the real world, and you get into debt for it. Isn't it just a great agreement that you have with the education system? And then, of course, we have people like Stevey J. He just doesn't bother to do any of it. Fuck the A levels, fuck the university degree. I'm going to go and travel. I'm going to go meet some people in the real world who are walking the walk, talking the talk. I'm going to read some interesting books. I'm going to take all this theory about how business is supposed to work, about how the world is supposed to work. I'm going to apply it in the real world. I'm going to run some experiments, I'm going to get some feedback, and I'm going to hone my own unique approach and hone my skills and my capabilities and become more competent that way. So you have people like Stevey J who just think, you know what? Why would I get into debt? Why would I slog away for 3 or 4 years at university in a useless degree, being lectured by some schmuck who's probably broke? The lecturer is probably broke. He's literally lecturing to you about finance and business, and he's probably broke. Barely making ends meet. And here he is lecturing you about how to start a business. Anyone sense the irony in this? Same with your teachers. And I don't want to offend teachers, but it's the same thing. And this is the problem with the internet, you see. And you've got all these people. The education system is soiling itself because you've got people like Andrew Tate. Mister, what colour is your Bugatti? Many's a student has recited that one to their teacher. And this is the thing. There's no comeback to that. Because Andrew Tate in this case, did he go to school and get his A levels? And did he go and get his university degree? No, he didn't. And what you'll start to find is a whole bunch of these people have not done this. It is not a prerequisite. You don't need to get A levels. You don't need to get a university degree. And this is the funny thing. People are starting to realize this. Young people are starting to look and go, hold on a second. I'm on the internet and I am looking at people who have not been through the conventional education system. People like Stevey J. And many other people like him. They are highly successful people. They are offering tremendous value to the community. and beyond. Yet they haven't a single university degree. They do not live in the land of theory. They don't theorize about what is the right thing. They get information and they apply it. They run experiments and get feedback. It's really that simple. And then when you get feedback, you hone your approach. You let feedback be your guiding light in the darkness. So this is the thing. When we have Stevey J on Tuesday past, and you listen to the man, you can clearly tell he's competent. He knows his stuff. Go on to his website. Look at the people he has worked with. Look at the things that he does. A man of his word. He delivers. No university degree. He goes out and runs experiments and gets feedback. Gets more new information, repeats the process, and he hones his craft that way. And so this is our episode tonight. Oh, to be educated. Well, you know what? If you want to go down conventional education, the route of conventional education, how about it? You may have a good reason for doing it. Maybe you want to become a doctor, and it's a prerequisite that you need to get certain A levels, and you need to get a certain degree at university, a medical degree. You have to spend a certain amount of time. If you want to be a doctor and you want to pass through that process, fine. If you want to be a lawyer or an accountant and you want to pass through the big lengthy process, fine. I don't give a shit. That's up to you. You've got your own goals and ambitions. But you know what, folks? Most of us haven't a fucking clue what we want to do at 16 or 17 years of age. Most of us don't. And yet here we are being told by conventional education, you need to get A levels, you need to know what you want to do, you need to go to university, you need to get in debt, you need to get this degree, you need to get these pieces of paper with numbers and words on them. You need to revise for examinations. You need to be able to memorize information and regurgitate it onto an examination script. This is what we're told. And then you listen to someone like Stevey J and you go, what am I doing? Of course I don't need A levels. Of course A levels are not going to define my existence. Of course GCSEs are not going to define my existence. Of course a university degree is not going to define my existence. What will define your existence is your competency. And to get competent at something, you do not need pieces of paper with numbers and writing on them. You don't need a degree, you don't need A levels to become competent at something. You don't need them. And most people do not know what they want to do. And so as a result, if you are like most people, completely normal, completely natural, when you are 15 or 16 years of age, you don't know shit about the world, you don't know anything, really. You've barely been alive and consciously experiencing the world and what it has to offer. How could you even know what you want to do? So by default, most people are going to have to do what? They are going to have to run experiments. Why do you need to run experiments? Because you need feedback. Once you get feedback, you are able to better assess if the thing that it is that you are doing is actually right for you. When you start to get feedback, the picture becomes more clear. If you stay in the land of theory and you never apply your theory in the real world, run experiments and get feedback, you will be forever stagnant and lost. You will be lost. You will have no skills, nothing really of value to offer, and you'll be lost because you have no feedback. Feedback's critical. How else are you supposed to improve? You need feedback. Whether that's through analysing your own performance or getting feedback from other people. You need both. Feedback. And when you are at secondary school and you're in your penguin suit in school and you're just taking notes, underlining and highlighting things and memorising things, that ain't applying your theory in the real world. You are in a bubble. And that's not how the world works. Reality check. And I think a lot of young people are starting to realise this. Hence why A lot of young people ain't so interested in A-levels anymore. Ain't so interested in going to university and getting into debt because they're seeing people online like Stevey J, Andrew Tate, all of these other people. Self-made people. Self-made. What do I mean by that? We talked about on a previous episode, self-made. Well, in this context, what I mean is they're self-made from the perspective of they've went out into the real world, ran experiments and got feedback and honed their own process and their own craft. They're not looking to get validation from some state-funded educational institution that we call a university or an examination board. Who cares? Nobody cares. In the real world, let me tell you something, folks. I have never been asked. I have never been cross-examined on my CV. Ever. Nobody gives a shit about your CV. It's just writing on a piece of paper. Anybody can draft up a great CV. You just have to go on to ChatGPT or Grok and it'll do up a wonderful CV for you. It means nothing. It's just writing on paper. Nobody cares about your writing on a piece of paper. People care about what you can do for them, what value you can offer them in any transaction, how competent you are. That's what people care about. People want to see your competency and feel it. They don't care what you have written on a piece of paper. And you should not let pushy parents or pushy teachers try to deceive you into thinking that A-levels and university degrees are the be-all and end-all. All you have to do is watch the interview with Stevey J, watch the interview with David Feeney here on the channel, and you will see two people who have not passed through the conventional education system, and they are doing extremely well in their own existence. You do not need the conventional educational system. You can use it if you want. If you want to get into debt and you want to dedicate your time to studying for exams, how about it? It's your life, it's your time, it's your energy. Do whatever you want. But that's what I learned from Stevey J. And that's what I learned from the interview. Stevey J has come to all of these conclusions without the need of any conventional educational system. He's just went out into the real world. He has consulted sources of information, books, and real people. He has taken those theoretical approaches to business and other aspects of life. He has taken that information, he's taken the theory, he's implemented it in the real world, practically, ran experiments, got feedback, and honed his craft that way. That is what we can learn from Stevey J. But anyway, we've been going for an hour and 15 minutes. The Bandido's been rambling, doing a good bit of rambling. Let's see how our stream is. Of course, I've made a few adjustments because we've been having some audio difficulties, and I haven't been able to figure out why. But I've purchased a few new pieces of kit to try and sort out these audio gremlins, so I'm hoping, it seems like everything's going just fine tonight. I've made a whole bunch of changes, so hopefully we aren't getting any distortion or crackling or offsetting of the audio and the video. But anyway, that's our bit of reflection. And so now it's perhaps the right time to see what you guys are thinking. Let's have a look at the live chat. See what you guys are saying about tonight's show. Do you agree? Are you all in favour of conventional education? Do you think the Bandido's being harsh? Is he talking out of his hole? Or do you agree? Do you agree with bits of it? Do you disagree with other bits? Let me know in the live chat. Let's see if we've got anybody in the live chat. I'm interested to know. See what you guys are saying. There might be nobody in the live chat. That has happened before. It could happen again. Let's have a look and see. Who do we have in the live chat? Let's get all of this sorted to make sure I'm not missing any messages. It looks like we have one live chat. Well, one poor soul has bailed us out. It looked like we were on for a bagel tonight. A bagel, of course, being 0 live chats. But there's no bagel. We've got one person in the live chat. Let's see. Who do we have? We have Schlop. But Jesus, Schlop's back in the live chat. Such a name. SHLOPHH. Schlop. So Schlop appeared in last week's show. I can't even remember what show it was. Maybe it was to do with the terrorist attack at Bondi Beach. So let's see what Schlop is saying. It's good to have you. It's good to have you with us, Schlop. Let's see what you're saying. Schlop says the following. Around 1880 is when state education was made compulsory. Wonder why? Question mark. Well, it looks like Schlop is questioning why in 1880. So according to Schlop's research, he's saying that in 1880, that is when state education was made compulsory. And he's saying, I wonder why. Well, this is the funny thing, folks, isn't it? Because I said it earlier. What happens? What do we get told? Oh, you've got free education. Education is free, but it's compulsory for you to do it or you will go to prison. Well, that's a bit of a strange dynamic, do you not think? It's free! Free education. Look what we're offering you. It's free, but you're going to go to prison if you don't do it. Yeah, that seems a little interesting, that dynamic, one must say. And so what Schlop is saying is he wonders why in 1880, according to his research, why was state education made compulsory? Well, this is the thing. State education was made compulsory. Let me repeat that. State education was made compulsory. So I wonder why the state made education compulsory. Well, why would you make anything compulsory? You want people to be subjected to whatever it is that you are saying. You want to make sure that there's no wiggle room. You can't wriggle your way out of this. And it is the state that wants to make education compulsory. And so as a result, what could we deduce from this? Well, the state must really want us to know something. The state must really want us to take its version of education above perhaps our own version of education. Why shouldn't families not just be allowed to educate their own children? Why shouldn't the community in which you live not be allowed to just run a few educational classes in the evening, an hour here and an hour there? What would be wrong with that? I'm sure everyone would get along just fine. I'm sure you would learn all of the necessary things. Do you really need to know Pythagoras' theorem? When was the last time you used Pythagoras' theorem in your own existence? Or trigonometry? I don't even know if I'm pronouncing these things correctly. Trigonometry, Pythagoras' theorem. When did you actually use Shakespeare's whatever? What did Shakespeare do? Blood Brothers, didn't he? I don't know. Let's check this up and see. What did Shakespeare do Blood Brothers? This will be a bit of a blunder if I've got this wrong. Because, of course, I did learn this at school, but it tells you just what an impact it had upon me. Let's see. Blood Brothers. Who was the writer of Blood Brothers? Is it Shakespeare? But Jesus, it's Willie Russell. Blood Brothers is a musical with book, lyrics and music by Willie Russell. Well, apologies, Willie. I was going to give all the credit to Shakespeare. It's a good job I looked it up. What else did Shakespeare do? Shakespeare plays. So I remember Blood Brothers vaguely. What else did Shakespeare do? Hamlet, Romeo and Juliet. Let's see what other things he did. Gosh, he did a whole bunch of stuff, didn't he? Well, Shakespeare was busy back in his time. Macbeth. That's the one I'm trying to think of. Macbeth. That is the one. I was thinking Blood Brothers. Macbeth. So yes. When have you found Macbeth useful in your own life? When have you found Blood Brothers by Willie Russell useful in your life? Or do you find these things very abstract? In other words, you had to learn them forcibly at the time because state education is compulsory. You have to learn it whether you like it or not. And so Schlop is asking, I wonder why state education was made compulsory allegedly in 1880. Well, all we can deduce from this is that the state must really want you to know its version of education, and it must really want you to know something. In fact, it wants you to know it so much that you as a parent will go to prison if you do not send your children to this state-funded educational institution. That's how important it is. Now, isn't that a bit strange, folks? Education's free, but you're going to go to prison if you don't do our free education. It doesn't sound very free to me. Bit of a strange deal, one could say. And so we would then have to ask, well, what would be wrong just with parents educating their own children? What would be wrong just with people in the community setting up little classes here and there just to learn the basics? Learn the basics. The things that are going to be most applicable to real life, and then have our kids sort of apprentice underneath other more experienced individuals, learn some practical skills that are actually going to be useful and valuable in the real world. Why not just do that? No, you need state-funded education. No, you can't have that. It must be state-funded. It has to be compulsory. And if you do not go, you will go to prison. That's your free education for you. So anyway, that's what Schlop had to say. Let's see if there's anybody else. I think that's our last live chat. Our last and our only live chat. And so, I want to thank Schlop for engaging with the show, for bailing us out tonight. I thought we were on to a bagel there in the live chat, but Schlop has bailed us out. I want to thank him or her for engaging with the show. And so with that, folks, that draws tonight's show to a conclusion. Episode 28, Oh, to be educated. I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. If you did like it, then feel free to give us a like. Give us a little thumbs up. All of your charity is gratefully received here at Bandido Talks. If you are watching the show after the live event, get down into the comments section. Let me know what you think about everything that we talked about tonight. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Are you in part agreement, part disagreement? Let me know down in the comments. And then finally, if you like what we are doing here at Bandido Talks, if we are, let's just say, if we are providing useful, valuable, interesting, insightful information, then feel free to subscribe to the channel. Lots of stuff coming your way, of course, in the incoming weeks. But that draws everything to a close tonight, folks. Again, I will put a link below tonight's live stream in the comments with a link to our guest episode with Stevey J. I would highly encourage you to watch the episode. It was a really, really good show. We've talked about bits of it here tonight. Go and listen to the man in his own words. I would encourage you to do that. The Bandido has more interviews coming your direction. Lots more interviews from very interesting guests as well in different fields, not just business. we have a diversity of individuals who will be coming on to Bandido Talks. So keep tuned to the channel. Subscribe to get updated on all of these things that will be dropping soon. Interviews, original music, live shows. It's all coming your direction. But anyway, with all of that out of the road, folks, I hope you have got your Friday night off to a successful start. Maybe Bandido Talks has helped you to do that. Of course, feel free to join us tomorrow night. We will be back again at 7 p.m. Irish time here on YouTube for some News on the Tube. We will be back for News on the Tube. We will be going down through common media articles and extracting the lessons from those media articles. So feel free to join us tomorrow night at 7 p.m. for our Saturday live stream, News on the Tube. With that said, folks, it is over and out this evening from the Bandido.